The Growing Readers podcast is made possible in part by our sponsors. Bedtime turning into pure chaos? Meet Mrs. Gord, the silly, persnickety, red dress-wearing heroine who wrangles wild bedtimes into dreamland. Written by mom of three, Jodie Catherine Bucher, Mrs. Gord proves you can be the calm in the storm. We'll share more about this book halfway through the episode.
A little girl that came over to get her book signed, and then she asked me, what do you do when someone thinks that your work is not good? And I think she was about 9 or 10 years old. And then she said, and what else do you do when you think your work is not good? And then so I said to her, I want to say, first off, when someone thinks that your work is not good, it's their opinion of the work. And because it comes with their own idea about what art is for them, it makes sense that they would have an opinion that work needs to look a certain way that may be different than what you intended, because everyone is carrying with them their own history and their own way of looking at the world. And the most important thing is the second question you asked, right? What if I think my work is not good? Okay, now we're getting to something, because now we're really focusing on what you want your work to look like and what you want your work to be.
Hey everyone, I'm Bianca Schulze, founder of the Children's Book Review, and this is the Growing Readers podcast. Today's guest is someone who has just had one of the most celebrated years in children's picture book publishing, and with very good reason. Cátia Chien is the 2026 Randolph Caldecott Medalist for her luminous illustrations in Fireworks, written by Matthew Burgess. A book that earned 7-starred reviews, was named a New York Times and New York Public Library Best Illustrated Children's Book of the Year, won the Society of Illustrators Gold Medal, and appeared on virtually every best-of list the kidlit world had to offer. And honestly, every bit of it is deserved. But Cátia is so much more than a single book, extraordinary as Fireworks is. She is a Brazilian-Taiwanese illustrator whose acclaimed body of work includes The Bear and the Moon, The Longest Let's Go Boy, All the Beating Hearts, and A Boy and a Jaguar, an ALA notable book and recipient of the Schneider Family Book Award. She is a 3-time Golden Kite Award winner and a 2-time Society of Illustrators Gold Medal recipient. Beyond the page, she has worked as a visual development artist on animated features including Wish Dragon and The Little Prince. And her work has been exhibited internationally, including at the Beijing National Gallery and the Bologna Children's Book Fair. She's also the founder of 1,000 Worlds, a free, evolving intersectional bookshelf of picture books by BIPOC creators, curated by BIPOC leaders in the industry. It is a gift to this community, and I encourage every one of you to explore it. What I can tell you about today's conversation is that it moved me. Cátia speaks about children, about art, and about the inner life of a picture book in a way that is honest and generous and deeply felt. She talks about what it means to honor emotion rather than simplify it, about experimentation over mastery, about a school librarian who changed her life, and about the bowling alley parking lot where she found out she'd won the Caldecott with her 8-year-old son standing right there beside her. This is a conversation for every reader, every creator, and every person who has ever felt something they couldn't quite put into words. Before I share our conversation, here is the book synopsis for Fireworks, written by Matthew Burgess and illustrated by Cátia Chien. Fireworks is a sparkling picture book from the award-winning team of Matthew Burgess and Cátia Chien, highlighting the simple delights of a steamy July day in the city as 2 siblings eagerly anticipate a spectacular fireworks display. As a hot day sizzles into evening, everyone on stoops and sidewalks looks skyward on this special summer night, the 4th of July. words and art blossom into flowers of fire across the sky, making this a perfect read for firework enthusiasts in cities and suburbs everywhere. Hi, Cátia. Welcome to the Growing Readers podcast. I have been so looking forward to this conversation.
Hi, Bianca. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
So I have been kicking off my conversations with some rapid fire questions just because I think it's a fun way to kind of get into the mood of the conversation. So are you good for that?
Yes.
Amazing. All right. Art store or art supply already on hand?
Oh my gosh. Art store. Always. I'm a collector. I love art supplies.
Colored pencils or paintbrush?
Oh, don't do this to me. I have to pick one?
Yep. You can change your mind another day. Paintbrush?
Yes.
First mark on a blank page. Do you find that exciting or terrifying?
Exciting.
Sparklers or fireworks?
Sparklers.
The anticipation of fireworks or the finale?
Oh, finale. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we dive into your beautiful book, Fireworks, I want to start with a pretty special moment because I think every Kidlit community listener wants to hear it from you directly. I understand that you were in a bowling alley parking lot when the Caldecott Call came. So take us there. And what do you remember about that moment?
I had just finished playing some game like bowling with my son who just turned 8 and he wanted to go to bowling, and I lost to him. And we were walking to the car to go home, and that's when I got the call. And immediately my husband could tell something was happening because I had that face, and he gave me some space, and I sat on the curb there taking the call. And Jewel Davis, the Caldecott committee chair, introduced herself, and then everyone was cheering, and I began to cry. And then that's when my husband and my son came in and gave me a hug, and my husband was filming the entire time. I didn't know, but he captured the whole thing. Yeah, it was quite special.
That's amazing. So how would you say that this whole season of recognition landed within your family?
Wow. Yeah, it landed. So my husband I am not even kidding. I mean, I know people say that a lot, that their partners are their biggest fan in terms of what they do, perhaps. And my husband really is one of my biggest fans. I mean, because within my inner circle of friends, a lot of my friends don't really know what I do. We don't talk about a lot of our friendships are based on family ties or a history of going to school together or something else. And so I don't necessarily bring my art into my inner world very much. But when I started dating my husband, one of the immediate things that he wanted to do was find out what what kind of art I liked. And he really does have a genuine appreciation and love for what I do. And it's continued through the years. And so he cried. He was very, very moved. And to just give you an example, my agent, Steve Mock, had texted me that morning to say, "I'm really proud of you no matter what happens." And I started to cry getting that text. And my husband said, I want him to text you I wanted him to text you every week with that, because you're always doing something great. So he just is such a cheerleader. And then my son, he and I, we make art together quite a bit, but it's never about how good or bad art is. And so he was quite confused when I got the Caldecott because he's like, well, where's my Caldecott? Right? Because he's just like, what does this mean? I mean, we make art together. This is, and then I had to, so kind of the genie was out of the box. So now we had to talk about what the Caldecott means and what our award, what is getting an award means. Where does it fit into someone's practice and process and all that? And so we had many conversations about art and about awards and inner, validation, external validation, what that all means. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is such a big conversation. And those are conversations that I feel like a lot of parents end up having with their kids just in the schooling world too, because there's a lot of awards that tend to go out and then not every kid gets an award. And so what does getting an award mean is such a big question too. I mean, do you have thoughts on what it means to get an award?
Well, the way that I talked to my son about it and the way that so recently I went to a school visit, and at the end of the visit was for second to fourth graders. And at the end of the visit, I took Q&A and I did a Q&A. And then even after the Q&A, there's a little girl that came over to get her book signed. And then she asked me, what do you do when someone thinks that your work is not good? And I think she was about 9 or 10 years old. And then she said, and what else do you do when you think your work is not good? And then so I said to her, I want to say, first off, when someone thinks that your work is not good, it's their opinion of the work. And because it comes with their own idea about what art is for them, it makes sense that they would have an opinion that work needs to look a certain way that may be different than what you intended, because everyone is carrying with them their own history and their own way of looking at the world. And the most important thing is the second question you asked, right? What if I think my work is not good? Okay, now we're getting to something, because now we're really focusing on what you want your work to look like and what you want your work to be. And now the way I answer that question when I come to it, when I think my work doesn't look good to me, is I ask myself a different question. Instead of why does this work doesn't look good to me, I ask myself the question, what do I have to learn? And so then I find ways, I imagine what it is that I want to have it look like and what I want to do with it. And then I look and I think about all the steps that I need to take to get there. And I find the people that may be able to help me. So I find the helpers that may be able to help me to get there. And that's how I break down that idea and that feeling that something isn't good enough. And so that there's a path to get there. And so that's what I said to her. And that's kind of the way that I think about awards, is that there's something external that happens to your work. And sometimes it's amazing, like a big award. And sometimes it's a bad review. And I've gotten those too. Reviews that misunderstand a book, or, that are not really connecting to what you meant it to be about. Then there's that external validation part, right? Which is someone's opinion of it. Now, but then there's the internal motivation, the part in you that's asking questions, that wants to find an answer to it. That's the part that you have control over. That's the part that is your creative process. And that's the part that we focus on. So I make that distinction between the two, between what is external and internal. Yeah.
Yeah. So great. Well, let's step into the book that started all of this award conversation. So what went through your mind when you first read Matthew Burgess's manuscript?
Oh, wow. I mean, when I first read the manuscript, it was titled Fireworks in Alphabet City. And so it was later that we changed it to Fireworks. And immediately I missed my sister, because growing up with my sister in Brazil, she was my constant, my best friend. And we're only 2 years apart. So much of my childhood being outside is tied with discovering the world with her. And the sensory experience that Matthew created in the words, onomatopoeia. And it was thrilling as an artist to encounter a manuscript where there's so many opportunities to play and there's so many things to discover. So not only did it conjure up memories of myself as a child with my sister, and it really made me yearn to find a way to get it on the page. And so it gave me the sort of calling to do it. But also the idea of that, also how much fun I would have in creating the fireworks and some of the sensory experiences. That's what came up for me. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the opening spread. So there's grandma in the kitchen cooking breakfast, because it does something essential before the fireworks even begin. So what is it setting up? And why does that matter to everything that follows?
So you really, when you open up the book, you see grandma cooking breakfast, and then you see the sisters eating and feeding each other breakfast, essentially. And, the older sister feeding the younger sister, the sense of care within the family. You can really feel that they all love each other. They're all taking care of each other. That is a really important place to start the story, because next page turn, they're on their own. The children are out, venturing out into the world. And what I wanted to establish there is the sense of security and safety in having that kind of courage to step out into the unknown. It starts with the security and the love from the family unit and from the grandma. Just as I think as a parent, we sort of pour all the love that we can into our children before they go out into the world on their own. And we hope that they'll carry their love with them. My son, he's 8. And every morning when he goes to school, and my husband works at the school that he goes to, so he drives him to school. And every morning when I'm saying goodbye to him, I say, take my love with you. And that's what this book is, right? He opens up with the grandma doing just exactly that. Feeding them, because in Asian culture, food is so much a gesture of love, and feeding them so their bellies are full. They feel, they're full of love and courage, and they can take the love with them in their journey as they venture out into the city and experience all the little fireworks.
I want to jump right to the finale spread, which critics have called staggering. So there's the spectacle gives way, all of the spectacle of the day, the adventure, the excitement, the watermelon, the fireworks, the excitement. And now it's something way more intimate, and it's this light and darkness interacting. So can you walk us through what you were trying to do visually in that final double spread?
Yeah, thank you so much, Bianca, for highlighting that. Yeah, that moment is so important because it sort of takes the journey to its landing. And, Matthew with the word within really opened up that possibility. And the way that I saw that is you have this big spectacle that is built up through the little fireworks of the children experiencing all the little moments in their day, and then the big spectacle of the big fireworks display. And then they get tucked in with all of that experience inside of them. And then the fireworks dissolve into something more intimate and emotional, where you get to see what's happening within a child. And what that is doing, hopefully, is creating this sensory experience of the depth and the capacity in which children are able to take in the world and experience the world. They have such an open heart, and they're able to feel so much. And I wanted to really capture that depth and that radiance of a child's inner world. And so much of also the way that children understand and learn of the world is processed non-verbally. And that's the other part too, is that, I wasn't a big talker when I was a kid, but I was a big feeler. I felt everything so, so big. And sometimes we get caught up in needing something to be explained for it to mean something. And I think we can trust that children are taking in the world in the way that they in their body, and that they're processing it, and that we honor that. I think is what this moment is that so much of that is in their body. And I wanted to honor that.
Yeah. When I look at that spread, and you just know how wonderful those kids are feeling as they're tucked in at night. And if every child could feel that way every day, it would be so amazing. And so I feel as though, and I've said this so many times on this podcast, but I love a conversation book. And I feel as though just that spread alone, you could have so many beautiful conversations with your kids about what does this mean to you? What do you think they're feeling? Have you ever felt that way? And I love that you've enabled that with that spread and Matthew's words.
I think you pointed to something really important there, which is that opens up a conversation, because one of the things that I do with Emmy is my son Emmy is, we talk about the thorns and the roses and thorns, where you talk about what happened in your day. And that's sort of an opportunity where you can talk about what happened in your day. And even a child was asking me recently, one of the questions that came up in the school visit, someone asked me, what is summer on the skin? So even the idea, even that sensation of what is summer on the skin.
And it's probably a whole lot of different things to different people, which is I love that. Kids ask the best questions. And so that leads me to this question. Some of the questions that I know you had to sit with during the creation of this book were, what does sound look like? And what does heat feel like? So how do you actually work through translating a sensation into an image that a child could hopefully feel?
I think the first and foremost thing is to allow myself to experiment and to fully be in the experience myself. And so that's first and foremost. And I feel like it's a bit of a combination of things. So coming from the discipline of having gone through an art school, formal art school, we have a lot of tools, as artists. We have the formal tools, academic tools of color theory and other kind of things in the back pocket. But more than that, I think that's sort of in the back pocket, but in the back of my mind. But more than anything, I feel into it. And there's a tactile quality to different arts tools. And knowing that nothing is off limit really helps. And so really helping, like with sound, for example, there's a way in which when something, it's example, when something, including fireworks, like pop, right? Something popping, like that first spread where they're completely immersed in the fireworks. It looks like a big umbrella of light. The pop of that moment, to me, feels like it's a movement forward and in. So it's that I really immerse myself in that experience, and then I start to create using different textures, and then from the textures I start to kind of narrate it down to maybe some colors, and then composition comes into play, and then of course the storytelling and where that fits into the storytelling. So it's a bunch of different layers of thinking, but a big part of it is play.
Yeah. Well, I imagine for many people, the big fold-out spread of the kaboom finale firework is a big favorite. Maybe this goes back to what the student asked you about, like, what does summer feel like on the skin? And so I think my favorite spread for me is 1000% the watermelon spread, because to me, that's I can feel the stickiness of the juice on my hands. And I just found that illustration so delicious. It was adorable and just like, I don't know, the pinkness of it all and the juiciness of it all. So that was my favorite. So do you have a favorite spread?
I do. I do have a couple favorite spreads. I have the last spread is one of my favorites, which we talked about. And I also, I like the first spread as well, which we talked about too. I like the feeding into. I like drawing the image of her, like, with her mouth open being fed. I mean, for some reason that was really fun. And then also, actually, the spread with the kids jumping through the water, like that was really fun for me to do too. Yeah.
Yeah. I also, as I was reading it, I just I could almost hear music. I mean, there's the description of the saxophone player, right? But I don't know if it's because I watched that movie In the Heights, that's the musical, and I don't know, but I could almost hear music playing throughout the book. So I mean, that's a testament to the words and the art, that I could hear sounds that weren't even there. But let's talk more about your process. So you said the advice you'd give your younger self is experimentation over mastery. So even years into your career, I know that you still sketch, erase, and revisit again and again. So what does that look like on a day-to-day basis in your studio?
Yeah, what that looks like day to day, when I talk about experimentation over mastery, as one of the things that I would tell myself, my younger self, because my younger self was more focused on technique and wanting to master something, which I think there is something to be said about understanding what the rules are before you break them. But my day to day now is keeping all those elements in mind, as we talked about, like the color theory and all those. Really, my day to day is more focused on integrating my creative practice with who I am today, and my curiosity interests now, so that it's a living practice, and it's not a formula based. It's not a disassociated technique based. It is a looking at who the children, being with the children as they are today, and being with myself as I am today, and understanding that our humanities connect in real time, and that it isn't something that I'm kind of putting on the shelf and then taking out when the moment comes, right? Like, I think it's an evolving practice and rich because of that. And so that means that I look at the world differently, and I practice than I used to before. And I think, and one thing that I find to be really interesting also is that when I'm afraid, I want control, and I want to make sure everything is correct and everything shows up perfectly. Like we see a lot in social media where people curate, and I get that, because there's a way in which public facing, there's little things that you don't want people to see and whatnot. But I think in a book, it's different. There's something about sharing the humanity of a book with children and others and adults, that there's something so hopeful about that I really feel like it's important to, at this moment, to both practice my openness in the world and how I show up in the world, and then how I show up, then take that and show up in my work with experimentation, meaning I play a lot. And it means that there'll be many days of not knowing. There'll be many uncertainties. There'll be many, many doubts. I have a lot of doubtful days where I don't know if I'm going to get to an image I can use. And my husband is a great emotional counselor for that reason. I talk to him through these moments, the ups and downs. But so my day to day really is finding my practice is very playful, but also uncertain, and a lot of beginning anew, beginning again, starting new, and staying open to the listening of the where my curiosity takes me.
We'll be right back with Cátia Chien right after this break. If you've ever stood on the other side of the door during bedtime, just taking a breath before heading back into the fray, this book is for you. Mrs. Gord by Jodi Catherine Bucher was born from a real night of bedtime pandemonium. With 3 little ones bouncing off the walls, Jodi slipped away for a moment. And when she swung the door back open, she emerged as Mrs. Gord, a quirky character with a homegrown British accent and a stop-and-scold silly way of reading bedtime stories. Within minutes, all 3 kids were fast asleep. This picture book for ages 4 and up is a true story about finding calm in the chaos and discovering your own superpowers. It's a tool for parents to connect, spark imagination, and turn the hardest part of the day into a moment of joy. Find Mrs. Gord at mrsgordbooks.com and follow along on Instagram and TikTok at Mrs. Gord. Links are in the show notes. Well, then how do you know when a piece is done? And when you talk about having those moments of doubt, and it sounds like your husband's a great support there, but how do you move through it? So how do you decide when a piece is done? And when you're doubting a piece, how do you move through that?
The only way to move through it is to give you the grace to start anew, and to know that you can always begin anew. And of course, there are deadlines, because let's be honest, we have to meet certain deadlines. So I think I hold it in my mind, when I practice the art, I hold it very, very lightly, and I give myself as much space as possible. Like I kind of go through the back door of my mind that holds the time, the like schedule. And I kind of go into this place of just giving myself all the time in the world. Kind of like, I think we all have been there where, we're really, really feeling maybe emotionally overwhelmed and we're wanting to talk to someone about it. And then when they say to us, you have all the time in the world, I'm here. There's something about that that like allows the nervous system to just settle. And then you already know that you've arrived. You're like, okay, I know I'll get there. And it's not like it's not like you're fantasizing that, yes, you have all the time in the world, you're going to take 20 years and be okay. It just arrives. It just lets your emotions and nervous system settle. And so I do that where I give myself that space. And then I think that I think, and then I think I just give myself the grace to just start and begin again. And then when in that space, I actually can see clearer about of whether something's working or not. That too, the clarity of that voice comes up more than the voice of you need to finish it by 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm able to see when something actually clicks in and connects with where I emotionally want to take it. And it emotionally resonates with me because I'm allowing it to have space to resonate with me. And I'm not anxious and I'm not worried about what other people are thinking. I'm really trusting that my connection with it's working. And then I will know that it's done.
Yeah. Well, on that concept of like evolution playing over mastery, is there something in fireworks that you feel as though that really served you well? Like, is there a moment in fireworks that maybe like you hadn't produced any kind of art like that previously? Like, what do you think makes fireworks resonate so much with people? And do you think it's because of that concept that you have of like allowing yourself to evolve beyond that idea of, mastery of fine arts? I don't know if that question even makes sense, but I'm just curious, like with that philosophy, and why do you think, or is there a specific moment in fireworks where that shows?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I love that question because it's such a mystery sometimes as to why certain books connect and other books don't. And so much of it, I think there's a wisdom in understanding that it's not up to you, in the moment of creating a book to really crack that code, because there's magic that happens when a book goes out into the world. Just as a child, when you love onto a child, or you do what you can to make them, to have them be ready for the world. But then the world will do whatever the world does. And there's a way in which it surprises you. And so, because a book kind of wants to be its own thing too. There's something about that I really honor as well. And I think what I can only say in terms of the magic of experimentation and sort of mastery and what that actually served in this book in particular, didn't need to reference what would actually look like fireworks necessarily. Like I did, of course, have the experience of fireworks. I've seen them. I know what they look like. And I did look at some photos and to kind of refresh. But in terms of being in the place where I felt scared that people might think it's something else, especially with the first pop, where it's a little bit more abstract. In a world of experimentation, there's a lot of trusting that when you're playing with it from a stance of understanding that your experience as a human, having gone through fireworks and other people's experience, will carry them through something that may be visually be a bit different, adjacent perhaps, and that actually in doing that, it actually creates a sense of the experience itself.
Yeah.
So it's not like looking at an archive of the thing, but it's actually sensory. Like it actually creates a sensory experience itself. Because we know that, at least like in my life, I know that's like the most transformative experiences for me were not the ones that someone told me what it is. It was the ones that I discovered it because I saw in it what it was in my body. I felt it. And again, with the way that children approach life, they're not in the concept world yet. They don't understand so much what it is. They're creating meaning for themselves. And so much of that, it comes through the feeling of a thing. But part of the feeling of a thing has to do with seeing it anew. Actually, like seeing it for what it is. Because the moment you name something, it belongs to a category of filing it away into something you already figured out. And there's something about fireworks that there's an at least for me, I feel like the reason why it also, it makes people feel like a child again is that there's an element of surprise and an element of delight in that surprise, that what's going to come up next? What are we going to see? And also there's a sense of it. How was that done? Like, how did they do that? Because it never becomes old, right? You never think, well, I know that pyrotechnics, I know that this, blah, blah, blah. It still is magical. And so I think in the experimentation of something, it creates that same kind of conjuring of something new. And the magic of that, hopefully you can capture that, because there's something kind of tangibly chaotic about it. And perhaps that energy is what people have responded to, but I will never know what it is. I just know that in my process, I try to be as honest to that place as possible.
Well, I realized as I was saying before, I was saying evolution over mastery, where I meant experimentation over mastery. So now I do want to go into the world of your evolution. So the evolution of Cátia Chien. So will you share a little about your school librarian, the first school librarian who brought you picture books when you were 15 and newly arrived in the US from Brazil?
I love talking about her. Thank you so much for bringing her up. So Mrs. Novosel, when I came to the US, English was hard for me to speak. And I was a teenager. And as we know, it's hard to be a teenager, I think.
Yeah.
And there's so much that that as a teenager, I think that you're kind of just figuring out who you are, and where you're placed in the world, and being in a new country, not knowing the culture, not knowing the language. There was a sense of it being scary, vulnerable, but also a little bit embarrassing at times. And Mrs. Novosel, she was our school librarian. And I know we hear a lot of stories about librarians and their magic, but it really is, honestly, it's true. Librarians save people. Libraries are, I would not want to live in a world that there wasn't a library in, It truly is that it was a safe space for me. And she created that. And she was a force of nature. She was outspoken, irreverent. And she was someone who was very, very curious about people. And she asked me lots of questions about myself. She didn't assume she knew me. She saw me. She asked me questions. And she brought me picture books, at a time that perhaps I would be embarrassed reading picture books. She showed me that any book at any age, it's a bridge to who you are, and it's not a category that you place yourself in. You just find the book that is for you in the moment. And she was able to find a place for me in her library, and I was able to find a place for myself in the books, in books with her. So that was really special.
Yeah, so special. I feel like for all of the Mrs. Novosels out there, I think you nailed that. Like, we're just so grateful for all the librarians and anyone that's putting books into the hands of kids, because, like you said, they are bridges. So I love that response. So she made you feel seen when you felt invisible. And I imagine that experience lives somewhere in the books that you make now. So between your dual Brazilian and Taiwanese heritage, your years in New York City, and that experience of arriving somewhere new and having to find your footing, how consciously did those layers inform your storytelling?
When I look back at the common thread of all of those experiences, I think the sense of belonging is a really big one. So I grew up in Brazil and speaking Portuguese. My parents are Taiwanese. So my heritage is Taiwanese and culturally Brazilian and Taiwanese. And so I spoke Portuguese, Taiwanese, and Mandarin growing up. But I moved around a lot also in Brazil. And so being the new kid, constantly the new kid, is not easy. So since I was little, I think I really felt I explored the sense of belonging quite a bit. And also my family in Taiwan they're quite global. So I have family in Taiwan and also Egypt and Japan. And so when we would go to Taiwan to visit my grandparents and my extended family, and I have tons of cousins, it felt like a gathering of the countries like all the countries in the world. And so as a child, I really felt a little bit like an astronaut where I could see the whole planet Earth and like a global citizen in some way. But on the one hand, you feel like you belong to everything. And then on the other hand, you belong to no one. And it's such a funny feeling. And I think a lot of third culture kids, they feel that way, where they feel like they're neither here or there. And then the sense of belonging becomes something that they then have to find a way to answer for themselves. Like, what does that mean? And so that definitely was a through line through Brazil to the United States. And then even in my inner circles, they'll tell you that I'm the kind of person that's very keen on making sure everyone has a voice as people are talking and not one person dominates a conversation. It's very, very, it kind of filters in through many different aspects of me. And so in my work, it definitely comes up to the sense of being seen, the sense of wanting to have children feel seen in their inner experience, their sensory experience. So it's beyond language, because one of the things that I experienced through my moves is that language can only capture one aspect of someone. And in fact, like when someone is of a different language and they learn a new language, the way they speak that language is so poetic. It's so beautiful because they're actually feeling the language. They're understanding it. It's not a given. They're actually thinking about, and not to say that obviously they're poets in every, even obviously native speakers, poetry and all that, but just in terms of about capturing that sense of universality and really wanting the sense of belonging to belong to everybody, but in a specific way that is the processing of emotions and the sensory, because that's so personal. The way that you meet something, it lives in your body and it changes you. So I think belonging comes through in that way, but that's not as conscious as it is just, it's a part of who I am,
Yeah. All I could think about while you were speaking then was, can you please distill all of that and put it into a picture book? I had visuals of this astronaut but then I don't even know. You'd have to do it because I couldn't do it.
Should we collaborate on a picture book?
It was so clear to me that just if you can distill that and put it into, it would be abstract, but it would be amazing. And I was thinking of Sophie Blackall's If You Come to Earth, but yours would be different to that. But that's kind of the beginning of the idea that popped into my head. And then I was like, if you haven't read Remy Lies, it's a highly illustrated middle grade novel, and it's called Pie in the Sky.
Oh, I love the term pie in the sky.
Yeah. So it's an immigrant family that moves to Australia, and there's grief involved, but it's that essence of language, and almost there was instead of the astronaut philosophy or concept, it's that they almost feel like aliens. And so it's almost like a contrast to what you were describing. But anyway, I don't know. I was like, please, can you make that a book? All right. Well, I think kind of following on from that, let's talk about how you founded the website 1,000 Worlds, which is a free evolving bookshelf of picture books by BIPOC creators, curated by the BIPOC community. And tell us about that website and the gap that you were trying to fill when you built it.
Thank you so much for highlighting that. So I started that project in 2020. It's been a while, but it's been a labor of love. And it came out of 2020, COVID, Black Lives Matter, and the sort of confluence of things and the feeling of wanting to contribute and wanting to make a difference in that voice, to create a place and a platform to uplift. And it actually came out of being asked to curate a mini community library. I was approached by a nonprofit to do a little curation, and I looked at their past curated little, it's a temporary library, and I looked at their past exhibits and realized that the books that they curated, even though it was for a certain community, BIPOC community, and the books themselves were of stories that depicted people of color, that the creators were mostly white. A lot of these books, and I realized, there is a understanding of wanting children to see themselves in picture books, but what about seeing people in the picture book industry that they can relate to too? And I reached out to them to ask them, if there was a curiosity, interest in making sure that was the case, or what is the obstacle? I wanted to figure out, is there something for me to do here beyond the curating? And then they mentioned that it's hard for them to find out if there is a directory of creators and BIPOC creators. Like, that would be very easy for them to look through and their books, and I thought, let me look to see. I'm sure there is. And I looked to see if there was. Of course, we need diverse books. There's a lot of really amazing organizations doing amazing things, but I couldn't find at the time a bookshelf of a directory of BIPOC creators and their BIPOC created books. And so I couldn't find something easy. And so I thought, okay, well, data entry time. And so I started to data entry a bunch of books and creators, and then put together a list, and just kind of for this nonprofit. But then the more I thought about it, was like, well, maybe we need to make this public. Maybe there's a way to create something that is easy for consumers, for educators, for people to want to tap into this. And so I started to, before I knew it, I was creating a website. And it was a lot. And and then my husband became the main data entry person. And then I was doing research. And then I was able to ask one of my best friends, who is a coder. So she's now the official head of technology for the project. And so she kind of oversaw a lot of the website building. And then I was also thinking about community, and how it doesn't make sense for me to be the one to put all of these together, because I'm sure their titles are really beautiful and worthy to be lifted up as well. And so I started to brainstorm ideas of how to bring the community together. And that's where the community aspect of having BIPOC leaders in the industry curated BIPOC created books,
Yeah.
came into being. And then, so that's the short of it. I don't know if I explained it very well,
No,
but
you did. I'm going to put the link in the show notes so anyone that's listening can find it really easily. But one of my favorite features is how you can kind of filter through to find just the right book, and you can apply those filters from the menu in the sidebar. And so I really liked that. So thank you for putting that together. And I love that I consider myself a literacy advocate and a curator of children's books. And I do think it's so important to include other voices, because we all do have our biases and our preferences. And even when we talked about art before, there are going to be people that appreciate art, certain pieces of art, and then others that don't like that art. And so I love that you opened it up to the community too, and I just think that that's so important to do wherever anybody can, is to make something a community project. So I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah. And I should mention, Bianca, that we are going to do an actual launch this year, because their features are not actually finalized. I mean, it can be used at the moment, but there's so much happening behind the scenes still, and we're adding tons of books to it. But So that's in the works. I mean, it absolutely is something that people can tap into today, but it will have a whole other kind of big launch this year with all the other features. So, and more books. We have a lot of books to process through. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I want to kind of go back to sort of the essence that you've said. You don't aim to simplify emotions, but you aim to honor them.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think we sometimes get wrong about what children can hold? And I know that's kind of a big question, but, like just off the top of your head, Cátia, what do you think we sometimes get wrong about what children can hold?
I think that it's really well-intentioned, our desire to protect children from hard things. I understand that inclination as a parent to want to curate an experience for my own child. I get that. But actually being a parent clarifies that even more now for me, is that whether or not I wish for things to be different, they aren't. The world is complicated and humans are sensitive. And they, again, going back to the understanding that children, even before they can explain and speak of something, they're actually experiencing it. And in that space of experiencing it, if they can't see it in a book, depicted in all of its complex ways, complicated emotional ways, they may feel alone in that. And we hopefully, in the best case scenario, a book can be the vehicle in which that can come out, whether it's coming out with, through talking about it after a book, or whether it's just an internal processing with a book. That is really, I find that to be something that to me, I think really honors the complexity of our emotional lives, and also honors, I think, the child within myself that understands that I didn't get a chance to have that place be honored when I was a kid. A lot of it is, when I was growing up, we had certain, within my family, expectations to kind of push away anger, to tame it down. Things are inconvenient, feelings are inconvenient. And, there are a lot of books that do those, that actually honor children and their emotions. And so this is not a new concept, but I certainly feel really, I'm on board with that.
Yeah. It's hard for me to explain, but I feel like that answer that you gave is exactly why your art connects with people. So, all right. If a parent or caregiver is sitting down with fireworks, sometime around this 4th of July, what would you invite them to do with your book?
Really good question. What do I invite them to do with the book? I think that I would say, I would love for them to, first off, to just be with the book and to kind of see what comes up for them and their experience. And what I would also invite them to do is to also visit their own memories of summer at any time in the year. So there are things that you do in the summer that actually can carry you through maybe a winter, like maybe during the winter you can do that. But perhaps sitting with Fireworks, the book, you can relive those memories, and then it can actually be something that you can even have warm feelings of summer, even during a winter time. And I think the other thing I would say is, we mentioned before, just exploring the inner world of a child and really kind of tapping to those questions of what's the summer on the skin feel like? And roses and thorns, what is it that you experienced today that were little fireworks? Can we notice all the little things in our day-to-day that create the little pops of emotion and fireworks? And even before the big fireworks, what does that feel like? And really and having like moments of presence and pause to honor and to revere how beautiful the ordinary is. There's something about that too. And I think that's what I would say.
And then could you imagine having a classroom of students, or you're at home with your kids and you pull out this big roll of butcher paper and
My
you
God.
have them lay down on it and you trace around them. And then whatever art supplies you have, whether it's, collage or paints or crayons, whatever it is. And then you say, okay, look, we got to the end of this book. This is what the kids were feeling inside. What's inside of you? Put it inside this. Can you imagine? That'd be so cool.
Bianca, you are brilliant. Oh my gosh, yes. I am definitely. Okay, I'm going to do that in the next.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And please tag me in a picture or something because I want to see that. I just think it'd be so great.
Do that, a workshop or something. That sounds brilliant. I will immediately do that tonight with my son.
And then finally, if our listeners were to take away one thing from our conversation today, what would you want it to be?
One thing I would say that, you honor yourself and that there is no wrong way to read a book. And that your feelings, they matter. And also that, reading is such a personal and creative act. And so embrace that, whatever comes of that. Yeah. And I would just say that, to just honor yourself.
Well, Cátia, I want to say this before we go. What you've created with Fireworks, along with Matthew, is the kind of book that reminds us why picture books matter, not just for children, but for all of us who have forgotten how to let something move us without needing to explain why. And the fact that you trusted that you didn't reach for easy answers or tidy meaning is such a gift. And the fact that the Kidlit world recognized it with the Caldecott feels exactly right. So thank you for the care that you bring to this work, for the children who will grow up with this book on their shelves, and just for being so generous with your time today. It's been a true joy for me, and I have to imagine that it has been for the listeners too. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Bianca. It was a joy for me to be here with you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this quest for growing readers and for listening to today's episode with Cátia Chien. If this conversation moved you even a fraction of how much it moved me, I hope you'll go find a copy of Fireworks and sit with it, whether that's with a child in your life or all on your own. Links to order Fireworks, visit Cátia's website, and explore 1,000 worlds can all be found in the show notes. And if the idea of tracing a child's outline on a butcher paper and filling it with everything they're feeling inspires you, please share it. Tag us. I genuinely want to see it. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love it if you'd leave a review, share the podcast with a fellow book lover, and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. Until next time, keep growing readers. The Growing Readers podcast is a production of the Children's Book Review. For more gorgeous books like Fireworks, I hope you'll visit us at thechildrensbookreview.com. Before you go, if bedtime in your house could use a little magic, pick up Mrs. Gord by Jodi Catherine Booker, a silly, heartfelt picture book about finding calm in the chaos. Available now at mrsgordbooks.com.